Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I am crafting with the Spellbinders August 2023 BetterPress Club. And it is, at the time of my recording this, it is currently sold out, but my contact at Spellbinders said that they are reordering it, so it will be restocked. So I don't know when that will be, but if you are interested in getting the August BetterPress Club Kit, then hopefully hang tight and it should become available at some point. What I thought I would do is, I know that the BetterPress ink is waterproof, so you can do some coloring after you've pressed, but what I thought I would try to do is play with these shimmer powders from Nuvo, and it's a really fast way of coloring, even though it is fairly abstract. I am going to try. I don't know how successful, or I didn't know how successful I would be as I was doing this, but what I was trying to do was actually get a little bit of the two reddish colors where the flowers are and get a little bit of the green shimmer powder where the leaves are. And it's not exact, but that's okay because the whole thing is meant to be fairly abstract. So it's just something kind of fun and pretty easy to do if you don't want to actually go in and do really fine detail coloring. So super fast. I did let that panel dry 100% as before I moved on to do the actual press design. Now, if you're like me and you're kind of working backwards a little bit where you've colored it first, positioning the press plate where I want it to be, because there were some very specific areas that I had colored in, and then I just flipped the whole thing over, and conveniently the chase has the grid lines, so you can just line up your panel to make sure that the press plate is where you want it to be. And then I'm going to use the BetterPress ink by Spellbinders to ink this up really, really well. And then I'll go ahead and press this into my colored panel. The panel that I'm using, it is 100% cotton card, but it is not the one that Spellbinders offers. So I'll be sure to remember to link to it in the description box below. But I have found a this particular one that I got was off of Amazon, and I found that it's fairly comparable. I will say the Spellbinders card does yield a better result, but for the price and the quantity I was able to get, this is really fun to use as cardstock that maybe you're experimenting with something, a different technique, and you just want to try it out. I did a lot of my BetterPress exploration series on using this card, and it's why I bought it. I wanted to not feel like I had to be precious with this particular cardstock. So I was really happy with the results ultimately, and now I'm kind of using it as my my go-to for just everyday BetterPress card making. But when I get to making like really special cards, I will for sure be using the Spellbinders card because that does give you better results. So this month's BetterPress Club Kit does have two press plates. So you've got this huge floral spray, but then you also have a sentiment, which is really nice. And the sentiment reads, glad we are friends, which I think is really, really lovely. And so I had a hard time figuring out exactly where I wanted to press that sentiment in, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to press it directly in or if I wanted to maybe press it onto some colored cardstock as a different look. So ultimately I decided that I would do the latter. So I'm going to clean this off really well, and I am going to actually press the sentiment into a bit of solid color cardstock. The cleaner I am using is the one that Spellbinders recommends, and that's the Ranger Archival Ink Cleaner. So I've been using that, and it works really beautifully, but I always do spritz it down with water, just because I don't want that any residual chemical from the cleaning agent to sit on the press plate. I don't know if it'll do anything, but I always spritz it down with water, so that's why you see me kind of wiping it down twice. And what I thought I would do is actually cut this panel down from 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and then I'm going to actually mat it with this really lovely cardstock from Spellbinders. And I just took one of the nesting dies from Spellbinders, the cutting A2 mats and layers, and I cut out a little bit from the center of that cardstock because it's really nice cardstock, so I didn't want to waste the center when most of that's going to get covered up anyways. But I always use the same die and die cut out of just some plain white cardstock. That way when I go to glue my panel on top of that frame, everything is really nice and level, and it sort of doesn't have a saggy middle. So here I'll go ahead and press that little sentiment onto a bit of scrap of that very same pinkish coral color. And I did try this with the BetterPress black ink, and as well I am going to try this with some white ink too. I wasn't exactly sure what would look better on the pink cardstock because this particular pink is a little bit of a mid-tone, so I wasn't sure if going with a dark ink would make it more legible, or if going with a lighter ink would make it more legible against the pink. And so when in doubt, this process goes so fast that it's easy enough to just do it in white and black and then have them side by side to compare. So the white that I'm using is actually a stays on opaque ink, and I've found that it works really well with the BetterPress, and it's a very nice bright white. And a lot of that does have to do with inking it up well. And I've always found that the first press is always just a little bit more translucent than subsequent ones. So I always consider the first one just a way to kind of prime the press plate, get a little bit of ink on there, and then the second one is usually for me anyways, the better impression. So I did do this a second time just to see how that would look. And so I ultimately, though, as I was comparing the two, this was probably the hardest part of the whole process of this card, was figuring out what to do with this sentiment. I think the rest of the card went really fast, and then it was just down to the end here, deciding whether to go with the black inking or the white inking, and then the placement of the sentiment ultimately. So it's so funny, the things that I get tripped up on sometimes, because I felt like the rest of the card was so fast, and it was just that last 10% of getting this card across the finish line that took nearly as long as it did to take to do the rest of the card. But that's one of the things that I really like about the BetterPress, is that it does make for some very quick card making if you're not indecisive like I am with things like where to place your sentiment. And then ultimately in the end, I decided that I would go with the black version. And one of the things that you can do with sentiments, if you don't want to just trim them down, is I just looked for a die that was roughly the height that I wanted, and I decided to die cut this. And then that way I get that nice beveled edge. And even though my die was actually longer than what I needed, I just scooched it down and then, trimmed it off on both ends with the die so that I can really get that nice finished edge. And also I could actually get it lined up so that it's nice and straight as well. So I don't know if ultimately I made the right call in terms of going with the black ink and in terms of placement, but I do love how the shimmer powder look as a way of coloring the BetterPress design. I do like how that panel turned out, and I'm definitely going to be doing this technique more because it's still very fast and fun, and I think ultimately it worked really well on that cotton paper. Thanks for joining me today, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.